Hi, and welcome to The Working Songwriter, the show where today's best songwriters come to talk shop. I'm your host, Joe Pug. Each episode here, we host a distinguished guest, and we ask them to go deep on their inspiration, on their process, on the general ups and downs of making a life in music. So, whether you're a grizzled veteran, practicing to one of those old metronomes that looks like a tiny grandfather clock, or else a scrappy upstart, just using GarageBand to snap all your snare drum hits to a grid, this is your show. Because ultimately, it is what every writer seeks most, an ironclad excuse to put off actually writing. Hey guys, it's the third Friday of 2020. I thank you for joining us. This week's show is brought to you by Banzoogle. Built by musicians and for musicians, Banzoogle is an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful website for your music. I'm old enough to remember when you had to pay a guy named a web developer to get a website made. And it would always be some guy named Ram who drove a minivan with tinted windows and who was prone to half-hour monologues about something called Linux and who smoked Camel Turkish Golds with the filter ripped off. And old Ram would charge you about $1,000 for a website that would be obsolete in 6 months. But it's the future now, you guys. That's not how it works anymore. We're allowed to have nice things now. One of those nice things is Banzoogle. Banzoogle powers the websites of tens of thousands of musicians around the world, from weekend warriors to Grammy winners. It has hosting and a custom domain name. It has tools to sell your music and merch commission-free, social media integrations, the ability to do subscription features with your fans commission-free. It's a great service. Listeners to The Working Songwriter can go to banzoogle.com to try it for free for 30 days. Just use the promo code TWS. That'll also get you 15% off the first year of any subscription. Thank you, Banzoogle. If you'd like to hear some of my music live in the coming months, you can do so over at YouTube every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for my weekly live stream. I think I'm going to start calling that Sunday Songs now, because the other name that I was using was definitely already taken. So just a spectacular case of due diligence on my part there. But yeah, every Sunday night, I will be playing some songs. I'll be taking questions and requests from viewers that are watching. It's a pretty good time. You should come on by. I've been enjoying it immensely. Head on over to YouTube and search for Joe Pug. Finally, if you enjoyed this podcast, if you'd like to help it remain a viable endeavor for me, here's a couple things that you could do to help. You could become a supporter of the show over at Patreon. Patreon is a platform that allows you to directly support creative endeavors that you find meaningful. You just head to their site, Patreon. You search for The Working Songwriter or my name, and then you sign up to kick in a few bucks, every month for the show. Think of it as a voluntary subscription. If just 1% of our listeners kicked in the price of a cup of coffee every month, it would make a huge difference. So thanks everybody who's done that already. And if you're not in a place where you can contribute financially, I get that. I've definitely been there. You could still help us out for free by either leaving us a rating in the iTunes store or simply telling a friend about the show, spreading the word about the show. The simple math on those last two things is that they will help me much more than they will be a pain in the ass for you. I'll end the harassment there. David and I have been friends for years, ever since we did a tour together across the East Coast fighting blizzards. And he has a new album out today, so this was a perfect opportunity to catch up with him, and I hope you dig it. Our guest this week is a native of Houston, Texas, but now his music is beloved by people all over the U.S. and the world. David Ramirez's life changed in college when a Ryan Adams album found its way into his hands. He had a vision for a sound all his own and set out to capture it by first traveling the country on self-booked tours, then building a loyal following in his adopted hometown of Austin, and finally taking his music to a more national stage over the last 5 to 10 years. He releases his albums in conjunction with Nashville's 30 Tigers Entertainment Company. He's toured with Shaky Graves, Noah Gunderson, Gregory Alan Isakov, and Citizen Cope. The Independent has said that he is blessed with an expressive voice and a huge range. The Guardian has written of his resonant, grown-up songs, and NPR has called him a moody innovator of Americana and an Austin icon. David is celebrating the release of My Love is a Hurricane, and he was kind enough to jump on the phone and tell us about his journey so far. Well, listen, man, I want to tell you, I was trying to think of today of how I was going to get into the interview at the start, and I walked past my fridge, and on our fridge, there's a magnet of a cutout from a story from the Austin Chronicle. My wife used to have a band called the Hems that would play at the Cactus Cafe all the time, and in the advertisement down there, at the bottom of the page, it said, like, the next week, David Ramirez will be headlining here at the Cactus Cafe.
That's great.
So
yeah, I remember her band.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, the Hems. They played in Austin a lot. There was a whole period that you spent and where you weren't really like touring nationally. You were mainly in Austin in that scene. Describe to me what you remember about those years. What was the Austin scene like when you first got there?
When I first got here to town, I wasn't really part of a scene, really. And that's kind of maybe why I stuck around for a long time, because I just come from Nashville, and it just seemed like there was a scene that I should have been a part of. I don't know what Nashville's like now as far as being a local, but that's how it was in 07 and 08. And so when I came down here, I was just playing on open mics and like living rooms and whatnot, which was casual and relaxed and no pressure. And met some good friends and had some good times. And then, yeah, I think the Cactus in 2011 had found out about my EP Strange Town, and they booked me to do like a month-long residency there, which was, I'd venture to say, like the most prestigious thing I had done at that point. And it was pretty cool.
I think that month-long residency is the cutout that we have on the fridge. Up until then, I mean, were you just kind of working other jobs and playing music on the side, or was this something that you envisioned as something that could take off and something that you were going to do?
Yeah, I've actually never, I moved here in 2008. I've never had a proper job here in town. I moved here after living in my Kia for 6 months, traveling the country. I had lost my job in Nashville. I was a waiter out there, and instead of going out to get another one, I thought I'd just give this thing a shot as like full time, play anywhere, whenever I could, and see if people liked what I did. And so after that 6 months stint of traveling around in 08, I moved here to Austin. And yeah, I never really had a proper job here.
Wow, that's really interesting. I think a lot of people who try to make that jump don't usually make it work. But it sounds like you certainly, the proof is in the pudding now. You certainly have made it work. What did that look like during that 6 months? Were you just driving to different towns and picking up bar gigs, or what were you doing? How were you booking the gigs?
If I was lucky enough to do a bar gig, then that was like a great day. A great day to play, like on a Sunday night at some random bar. That was what I would consider a successful evening. But most of it was street corners and coffee shops and open mics and living rooms. And so yeah, I'd be out on the road. Like a normal day would be like hit up a Panera Bread or a Starbucks in the morning and just Facebook anyone I knew in different cities. I think I'm going to come to your town in about a week. Do you have 20 or 30 friends that would like to sit in your living room and listen to me play songs and tell stories? And when I couldn't book one of those from a friend or an acquaintance, then that's when I would start hitting up coffee shops. And if that didn't happen, I'd just take a day off in the city and find a bus stop and kind of play around there. But yeah, it was a fun time. But no, I mean, it wasn't anything glamorous. But I think personally, I needed that moment in my life of independence and really trying to figure out how this works on a day-to-day basis. And Yeah, it was exciting, but I couldn't do that forever. My original goal is to do it for a year, and after 6 months, I said I there's no way I can keep going.
Yeah, I was about to say, as a married guy with 2 kids and a mortgage, in some ways that sounds like a dream to me right now, to be able to just drive from town to town and call
Oh
people
yeah,
up.
yeah.
But then when I think about like the practical realities of it, crashing in the car, waking up, every moment a public moment, out in public, that sounds like it would get old pretty quick.
It got old pretty quick, and I'm still a bachelor with no children, and it sounds like a nightmare to me as well.
Well, most things I did in my 20s, now in my 30s, sound like a nightmare. So that's a variation on a theme there. So you kind of were footloose and fancy free at that point. What were you? I know you're really close with your family, really close with your mom and dad. What did they think about what you were doing at this time? They must have been pulling their hair out. Like, what the hell? Does this guy think he's living out a Jack Kerouac novel right now, or what?
Yeah. God bless my parents and what they allow me to see in their face and what they allow me to hear in their voice. Because I'm sure you're right. I'm sure they were pulling their hair out and, constantly worried. Where is he today? And where's he sleeping? What's he eating? But every phone call and every time I did end up in Houston on that trip, I never really got any flack for it. It was, I guess this is what he has to do right now. So they just gave me the freedom to do it.
It's got to be a scary thing to do it as a parent, but that seems like the only way to go. Well, how did you? So you were born and raised in Houston. You spent some time in Nashville there. How did you land in Austin? Why was Austin the spot after you traveled for 6 months that you ended up spending significant time in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple story. I was in a relationship with a gal who was at UT, or graduated from UT, and she was hanging around Austin for a while. And so, yeah, I just wanted to be near her. And how most of those stories go in your young 20s, when you move to a city to be in a relationship, and, give it a few months and it doesn't work out. So that relationship didn't last long, but I didn't really have anywhere else to go. And I had a good friend here who's still around in Austin, but he was like, I know what you're doing, and I know money's not good right now, so I own a condo. I have an extra room. You can live here for $200 a month. It was like a steal.
Yeah.
So because I could afford it was essentially why I stayed. And then thankfully I got to meet people who are now some of my closest friends. And that kind of made my love for Austin grow, for sure.
So when you were doing that stint traveling around for 6 or 7 months at a time, were you mainly playing covers at that point, or had you started writing your own music and you were playing original stuff? At what point did songwriting become a part of your repertoire rather than playing other people's stuff?
Yeah, I never really learned a lot of other people's songs. I mean, if I fall in love with a tune even today, I'll learn it. But, I mean, from the minute that my brother came home with a guitar for himself and I made fun of him for it, and he'd go out of the house, I'd sneak down to his room and kind of figure out how to play this thing. And I was going to church at the time, and, the only opportunity to really play in front of people was, the youth service on a Wednesday night. And so I'd learn some of these gospel tunes to sing. And but yeah, there was just something about writing my own stuff that always really I found interesting. And so yeah, even when I was just doing that 6-month stint, and before that, when I was living in Nashville, I was always just singing my own songs.
When did you feel like those songs kind of came into their own to a point where a place like the Cactus, which is, man, in the folk music world, that is a prestigious gig to get for a month. When did you feel like your songs got to a point where people like that would take notice of you?
That's a great question. I don't know. It was probably House One open mic here in Austin. Playing a street corner, or anyone who has the audacity to play in public kind of feels like they're good enough to do it. Even at the start, we wouldn't do it if we didn't think we had something. And
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, playing an open mic here at House One, it's not really a bragging point to post online. I'm playing this open mic, so I never really posted anything. But yeah, I played a couple of songs there and went and sat down like you normally do. And a couple of guys came up, asked who I was, told me they loved my songs. And that's when I was like, okay, maybe I do have a little something here. And just kept hitting up that same one, or what was it, Monday night at House One, I think. And you remember that place?
I think I might have come a little bit after House Wine was a thing, because I don't particularly remember. I got to Austin around 2011, 2012, I think.
Yeah, I think it was still around. It might still be a thing, but it's behind the P. Terry's on Barton Springs. It's like tucked away in a little dark alley.
If you take a right from South Congress on to Barton Springs, is it then on the left and there was like a juice place below it maybe?
Oh, that's Flipnotics. Yeah, but it's right around the corner
okay.
from there. Yeah, right around the corner from there. Yeah, so I think that was probably around the time that my confidence started building. You know, it was a packed Monday full of other songwriters, and you know, to geek out about words or melodies was, you know, built a lot of confidence in me to hit that up on Mondays. And then I guess that was 2010. I was really playing that place, and then went in and did my EP Strange Town in January of 11, and then March of 2011, my manager booked me to play the Parish, and it sold out, which was very surreal to me. But he's a smart businessman and got people to hear the music and got people to show up. And it was after that the Cactus was like, yeah, come on down. And I was by no means mentally prepared for that gig, but you know, it was quite the honor, and I had no idea what I was really getting into, but really, really cool. And since then, Cactus and I have worked together on a lot of things, and we have a really nice friendship.
It's really important. You were speaking of your manager figuring out a way to broadcast your music to people so that you could sell at a place like the Parish. It's really important if you got something going on artistically to find someone, I think, who can help get your music across to other people. I guess the word for that in any other business would just be marketing. But it's a little bit more nuanced with music. It's so important to find someone that you jive with who can get that across.
Yes, I agree. He's been there essentially since day one of a career. I guess one might say I didn't have one until he showed up. So we've still been working together for about 10 years now.
Yeah, that's right.
Good guy.
It's a trip. I think for some reason, people who can really write songs and perform them, they don't tend to be the best advocates or best marketers for themselves, or the people who have both of those gifts. Sometimes it just kind of comes off. It's weird in a way that you don't want to hear a musician market themselves to you. I don't know what that is. I feel like other professions, even other arts, I wouldn't mind being sold something by the artists themselves, but there's something about music in particular where I want to hear it from somebody else, you know? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know, it goes back to what I was touching at earlier. I think, you know, someone learns a few songs or a few chords and, you know, writes a few lines, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the excitement, and you're like, I'm good at this, you know, and I don't know, that's a beautiful thing about it. But yeah, you don't really, I don't really trust anybody that says that they hand me a record. I'm like, okay, here we go. But then when I pop it and listen to it, finally, it's usually shocking how good it is, you know. But yeah, we don't like to listen to songwriters.
It is shocking how many great bands there are out there, how many great songwriters that there are. I mean, I'm sure you know, actually you have a song about this, actually. Every town that I go to, you know, I can meet somebody or hear some of their work, and it's like, wow, man, like you could be on this same circuit that I'm on, man. You could be doing this, but for some reason things broke a different way for me, and here I am instead of you. It's really humbling to see that as you go across the country.
Very humbling. Yeah, definitely.
What is that tune of yours that it's a bridge in the song that references
New Way of Living.
Yes. Yeah. Can you kind of explain where that came from?
Yeah, I was in Fayetteville, Arkansas, playing their Roots Fest. I don't know if they still do that. Great festival and a really great town. And I just had a small slot at the front stage of George's. You know that place, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was there with a girl I was dating at the time, and afterward we were just going to pack it up and go back to the hotel and crash, but these guys came up and invited us over to their house to, you know, build a little fire and sit in some lawn chairs and pass the guitar around, and so we went, and yeah, there was this guy sitting next to me who, you know, I don't know, played 3 or 4 songs within the round, and He's just good, like really, really good.
Yeah.
And I ended up asking where I could find his stuff, and he kind of laughed. He's like, "I don't do this for a living." I forget what job he actually had, but it was he was a blue collar guy, and he's like, "I just like writing songs because it's a fun time," and that was it was humbling for sure, because he's far better writer than I think I'll ever be, and I think of him often, actually.
Yeah, well, it's also kind of a nice reminder, especially, I mean, you and I are both a decade in doing this. It's a nice reminder of what it originally was, which would be really fun to just sit down and write a song today. You know what I mean? Yeah,
that'd be a really good time without like the, am I getting to the chorus in time? Yes. Is everything, is the grammar perfect? Like whatever. It's just, let's write it because it's a good time. Yeah.
Yeah, well, because at that time you're writing and you're expecting nobody to hear it. Like you're almost sure that nobody will hear it, so it doesn't matter how the song turns out, and that definitely frees you up in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got to say, during this lockdown that we're experiencing, I was having a conversation with a buddy here in town. He's a musician, Walker Lukens, and he said it's been interesting because it's kind of that little voice that I've in the back of my head that I've shut up in years, like, that creative voice that just says, be free, do whatever you want. That guy, he said, I'm kind of listening to that guy again. And I felt the same way. And I mean, no one's ever going to hear this song, but I just wrote a rap track just for no reason. Yeah. And it's probably no good at all. And I don't think I have any ability to be rapping, but that I felt like a kid again. And, but if I hadn't been on lockdown, I'd be on tour right now. And if I were to be writing a song, it'd be like, well, this might be on the next record. Yes. But right now there's no tour and I'm just hanging out. And, I'm kind of reliving some of that youthful free spirit of mine.
Right. And like, of course, no one's going to, like, you're not going to release that and no one's ever going to see that piece of work. But I think that there is something really important about flexing different muscles. And you'd never know what you got from that completely, what you would call like an inefficient piece of work. You're never going to use that directly for anything. So what's it worth to you? But I bet you'll end up finding something from there, either a technique or maybe even a line that ends up becoming something. But that's just such a long, winding process that does not lend itself to the normal album cycle process.
But yeah, it's the little nuggets that you find along the way, and and I'm not an engineer by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been kind of playing around with some little mics here, and this track that I was working on, although no one will ever hear it, I'm learning how to mic my amp, and get a better vocal tone, and that stuff's been really neat, and I think that'll definitely play a part in my life.
Man, that is a really fun rabbit hole to go down, actually, because I've kind of gone down that over the last 5 years, and the technology that's out now, for you to just build like a little home rig, great mic, great preamp, great band EQ, great compressor. I mean, it's cheaper than it's ever been, and it just sounds great. You can make a commercial record, a commercially available record from a home studio that cost you $3,000 to make.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Yeah.
Have you gone down the reverb rabbit hole yet? With
no,
that site
I
reverb,
haven't.
Dude.
No.
It's messed up. You'll end up spending a lot of money. It's for people who are listening. For people who are listening,
$3,000, but 30.
That don't know what this is. It's basically eBay for specifically musicians, and you can really go down a rabbit hole. The good part about it is, and this is how I justify it, is that things basically hold their value. So you can buy it, try it out, and if you don't like it, you can sell it, and you're basically just out the shipping at that point. That's how I justify it, David. But
well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's my gig for next week.
Yeah, just get on the reverb and take out a second mortgage on your house and spend it all on outboard gear, bro.
Yeah, I love it. It's going to do real well with the lady, for sure.
Exactly. It's really impressive.
Yeah, real impressive.
Well, man, one of the things I I had so much fun this morning reminiscing on that tour that we did together. It was the first time that we really got to know one another. You and I were both living in Austin. We were going to do this tour together. It was a relatively long tour. It was about a month-long tour on the East Coast during a freaking blizzard on the East Coast. This must have been 2014 or something. Do you remember what year it was?
I think that was 2012.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I think so. I just moved back into town, and I was living on a place on East 12th Street. Because I moved into this house in 2000, at the end of 12, and it was before I moved in here. So It had to be 12, yeah.
Got it.
I think so. There was a blizzard. Yeah, we got caught up on a mountain in Vermont, and we're just afraid the van was going to slide down this slope.
Oh,
Scary.
I actually totally forgot about that part. Yet, I was thinking of when we were. Do you remember when we were in Charlottesville, and my dad was coming down to see the show, and he had to abandon his car at some point? Do you remember?
Yeah. We were stuck out on the street, like pushing the car or something.
Well, he had to abandon his car, came to the gig, and then after the gig, we all went to go find his car, but I think he was a little bit stoned, so he couldn't remember what street the car was on.
Mm-hmm.
And then
that was a hell of a time, man. Hell of a time.
Oh, my God. And then, I do remember that night us he had gotten his car stuck. There was a hill. You really figure out how hilly a city is when there's an ice storm and a blizzard.
Oh, yeah. You're like, oh, that city's flat. No, it's not.
No. Charlottesville, quietly very hilly. And he had gotten his car stuck at basically what was the bottom of a parabola. And, I just remember me, you, Matt Schusler. You're supposed to have a video somewhere of us trying to push that up, but you've never been able to find it, unfortunately.
I do remember taking a video of that, but who knows? Maybe one of those phones that just got flushed down the toilet or something. Who knows? Well, but yeah, that was a crazy time.
What do you remember the most about that tour, playing wise? I know that was one of the. Had you toured the whole country before that, besides your 6-month stint after Nashville?
No, not on a. I had before, doing the small gigs by myself. That was the first tour that I had toured with, a professional career-minded band. Like
venues and stuff. Yeah. What do you remember the most about that time, like the lead up to it and the tour itself?
I thought that I was a pro at this, and then realized very shortly into our trip that I was not. I had a lot to learn. I don't remember much about my sets. I remember a lot about yours. I remember a lot about your songwriting. It was really inspiring, but more just how you and the boys conducted yourselves. And I remember those first few days I was just late to van call. Van call to me before this was not. I was traveling by myself, so if I woke up a little late, I'd just speed and get there. And I remember maybe 3 days in, you and another bandmate, I forget who, it might have been Matt or Greg or something, but, van call is gospel, all right? You've been late the last 3 days. You can't be late. If we say this is what time you show up, this is what time you show up. And that was a big lesson for me, and one that I have adopted into my, my crew. And, I will never forget just how on top of it all you were. And before that, I was just this kid kind of floating around enjoying what I thought was road life. Like, oh yeah, fucking let's get drunk and let's hang out with chicks or whatever. It was, for me, it wasn't really anything about the work at that point. Sure, I enjoyed the work, and I always had a blast playing my songs for people, and I really appreciated if someone took anything from my set. Obviously, all that stuff meant a lot to me. But at that time in my mentality, basically in my life, it was just life's a big party, and let's just celebrate and hang out. And yes, you, Joe, are someone who allows themselves to have a good time. But I was kind of swinging for the fences for sure, and I think I learned a lot and took a lot from, like I said, how you guys handled yourselves, and a lot of those things I've.
To be clear, I still do think it's. To be clear, I think it's very important to still get drunk, but just to be on time for van call. That's it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, by no means am I accepting judgment from you. It's just, I learned a lot there. I think I grew up a couple years during that month-long trip. It was really humbling, but really good.
You heard David mention that the lockdown has allowed him to again listen to that creative voice in his head that just says, be free. Feeling unconstrained by an album cycle or a particular recording session or a creative image can be very liberating, and sometimes it's the very thing necessary to dislodge a writer from a rut. It made me think of a poem that I read this week. My friend Jerry DeSica of the Black Swans texted me about this poet I had never heard of before named Jared Carter. I've been consuming a lot of his work this week, and this poem in particular is a testament to listening to that creative voice which says, be free. It's entitled Improvisation. To improvise, first let your fingers stray across the keys like travelers in snow. Each time you start, expect to lose your way. You'll find no staff to lean on, none to play among the drifts the wind has left in rows. To improvise, first let your fingers stray beyond the path. Give up the need to say which way is right, or what the dark stones show. They will show nothing till you lose your way. And what the stillness keeps do not betray. The one who listens is the one who knows. To improvise, let all your fingers stray. Out over emptiness is where things weigh the least. Go there. Believe a current flows each time you start. Expect to lose your way. Risk is the pilgrimage that cannot stay. The keys grow silent in their smooth repose. To improvise, first let your fingers stray. Each time you start, expect to lose your way. It seems like in the last year, as you've been working on this latest album, you've been maybe a little bit more studio-minded, home a little bit more, but you really hit it hard. You hit it like crazy for like 5 or 6 years there.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the decision to do that, and talk to me about the high points of that and the low points of that. What did you find from hitting it that hard for like 5 or 6 years?
I don't know if it was a conscious thing, that I'm going to hit it hard for 5 years. I think I realized you gain a little hometown success, and you kind of start walking around like you're a little too big for your britches. And I think I realized on your tour, and I did once with somebody else shortly after that, I realized just how many people there were in the world. And, and how hard you really have to hit the road in order for people to hear what you do. And not just that, if I am going to choose to make a career out of this, then I need to make money, and I can't make money playing Austin 4 times a week like I did in 2008,
Right.
So if I'm only playing here once or twice a year, then I need to find other cities. And that was kind of like the big thing. But again, I wasn't like, I'm going to hit it hard for 5 years and just do it. It was just, I need to make some money. I need to learn how to tour. I need to learn how to play in front of people. And that was really kind of the mindset behind that. And the low parts were mostly loneliness, because at that point I didn't have a band. And so I'd go out with just a tour manager, and you and your crew were really generous and letting me ride with you. But a lot of the opening acts that I had, even if they were 2-week to a month-long tour, they just needed to take me along with them, so I had to drive myself. Yeah, and so it was pretty lonely and really hard in that way. And because I didn't have a band of my own, I never really felt that collaboration and that community that I'd always longed for, really. And thankfully today I'm in that position. But no one picks up guitar and says, I want to be a rock star. And by that, I mean, I want to play all by myself and tour all by myself. Like, there's a friendship and a familial thing that you long for and crave. And that was something I always found myself being pretty jealous of, for people who did have that. But yeah, I learned a lot, man. I just pushed it out. And it was, man, I mean, not to be cliche, but seriously, no regrets. I mean, some of my favorite memories are of those times for sure.
Yeah. I know, I think that sword cuts both ways, though, wanting to be the esprit de corps of a band versus the solo thing, because I think, and I've talked to a lot of people who are in bands that, it's a 4 or 5 person operation, and they long for what you and I do, because they say to me, like, well, man, I don't get to just choose by myself when I go on tour. Like, the band makes a decision, and then I have to go do that or stop being in the band, so
right.
It's, but I also do know what you mean. When you see it really working with the band and there is an esprit de corps there, and you're just the guy, in my case, driving around at the time, a silver Windstar chasing a bus or something like that,
Sure.
you feel like a freaking psychopath, just alone by yourself all day until you're in front of a couple hundred people and then back alone.
Yeah.
Again.
And you kind of feel like a third wheel also, you know, and, you're showing up by yourself, and the bus got there the night before, and you're kind of a little late to the party, and they're like, "Hey, how's the drive?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm like this random person on a blind date," And but yeah, I mean, about the double-edged sword thing, it's also, I don't know for me right now if it's even like grass is greener situation. I think it's been an evolution, really. Like, I got as good as I could get by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the natural evolution of things. In order to go back, even when I have moments with the band and they can't do a tour, it's like, nah, I don't want to do it solo. Even if I had the option, really, I'll do one-offs or whatever. But I'm not going to go out for 6 months again by myself.
Right.
Because on stage, I don't feel challenged anymore. I don't feel like I can hit those notes that I know I can hit if there was like a screaming guitar solo behind me, So for me, I think it's just been a progression, and I could go do it, but I wouldn't find satisfaction or fun. I have the ability to, and sure, because the records just have my name on it, but it's just not exciting to me anymore to do that.
Well, I can understand it not being exciting, but the reason that you can go out and do those shows is not just because your name's on the record. I mean, you really did craft a solo show by the end of this that was a show. It wasn't just a dude with a guitar going through songs. Like the last solo show of yours that I saw, it was a show. You know what I mean? So I hope that you eventually come back to that at some point, because I think it is something. I know what you mean about the band thing, and I'm actually kind of I'm going in a similar direction as you as well. Finding a lot of meaning playing with other people, but that solo thing, if you can do it right, man, it can hit pretty hard. And I saw you do it more than once.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, it's by no means do I hate it or loathe it, and maybe I will do another one. But I guess in this moment of my life, I just long and I crave for just those moments where everyone can celebrate. We all were shooting for a goal, and then those nights that you hit it, and we're all in the green room. We're like, we fucking did it.
Yeah.
We did it together. And I know there's been a lot of beauty in that since the beginning of time, teamwork and whatnot. But for the first time, I'm experiencing that, and I love it.
Yeah, it's not even just teamwork. It's you feel like a band of a merry band of pirates, because you drove in. You just drove into the town in your little ship, your 15-passenger van, and we
looted the whole town.
Yeah, man. Like, you came in and people came in and had a great time and brought you a bunch of money, and then in the cover of night, you drive off to the next place. I mean, you really do. I
love that.
I remember reading Moby Dick about these crews that would, work these whaling ships, and I've just never felt. I thought it was just a perfect description of touring life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, I like that. Pirates.
Talk to me a little bit after that season of touring for so long. I kept on hearing through the grapevine for like the last 3 years that you've been working on this new record. You did that record with Sam up in Maine, Sam Kassir up in Maine, which I love. It's my favorite record of yours. But you've really been hunkered down working on this new one. You were quarantining before Corona was even a thing to work on this record. So tell me about that process, because this process, from what I've heard from the outside looking in, seems like the most in-depth recording process that you've ever done before.
Yes, correct. Yeah, prior to this, every record essentially would be 3 weeks tops that we'd be in the studio. A lot of that boiled down to just budget. I didn't have a lot of money to spend on these things, so we had to do it in a quick way and really efficient. And but during the time between my last record, We're Not Going Anywhere, and the day that I hit record on this latest one, I had an opportunity with Matthew Vasquez and some other songwriters, Nathaniel Rateliff and Kelsey Wilson of Sir Woman and Noah Gunderson, to go out to New Mexico and just do like a friend side project band. And we named it Glorietta. And that was a moment for me where that was the first band I was ever a part of. I've never been in a band before. And where I'm not the guy. I'm just somebody that kind of stands on stage left and, sings occasionally and plays some guitar. And I just fell in love with it. And so with this one, the budget wasn't really there for me to spend tons of time. So it wasn't a straight 18 months, but a couple times a month for 3-4 days, I'd go up and write, record, and then come home and write with a bunch of people. Or go out to California with my buddy Matt Wright, who now plays with you, and I'd go out with him, and we'd hang out for a week and write some songs. And because of Glorietta, I went into this record saying, I just want to write and play with as many people as possible. And that was kind of that was the goal for this one. I just wanted to, I guess I realized that with just my fingerprints alone, there's only so much that I can do. And from my perspective or my experience, and when you throw a lot of people's perspective and a lot of their experiences in the mix, hopefully what comes out is something a lot prettier, a lot deeper, than you'd be able to do on your own. So that was kind of the goal with this one.
Had you really co-written much before this, or before Glorietta, rather?
Not for any of my stuff. I mean, I was in a publishing deal for a while with a company in Nashville called Cobalt, and they would fly me out from time to time to co-write with some country writers, just trying to pitch songs for, Tim McGraw or whatever. And so I'd done writing with other people, sure, but never for my ego and my goal for the longest time was on the back of the record to say all songs written by David Ramirez.
Right.
That was always my thing. And so no, I had been in conference rooms with people, tossing around words and ideas, but for my work, no, that's never been a case.
Yeah, it's interesting. It sounds like, and this is always the way that it goes, it sounds like the ability to drop that ego need of it saying David Ramirez on the back. I felt the same thing my whole life. You say all songs,
sure.
Joe Pug on the back. It sounds
Right.
like the way that you're able to let go of that is just, and I'm speaking for myself here, but I have a feeling it might be similar for you. You just reach a point where you just kind of feel confident, and you feel so confident that you can go with other people's stuff. You feel like you've made your bona fides. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I'm bona fide. I can do this. I've proven in the past that I can do this. And now I can just move on and try to make something beautiful. And it doesn't have to be all about me.
Exactly. Yeah. That's kind of, you have confidence in your ability and just who you are as a person, that it doesn't require attention in order to sleep well at night.
Yes.
That I'm okay with who I am. And so, let's kind of spread it around now and see what other people have. And that was really just for this one. And I think we came out with something really fun and really different. I mean, it's a massive left turn from anything I've done in the past, but that was it. And, hopefully people love it, but what I take away from it is I think I have a pretty fun, sexy record that I wouldn't have been able to do on my own. And I have 18 months of just crazy stories of 20 to 30 people all coming together over the course of this year and a half that all contributed something, and they were all justified in where they came from. And, whatever small contribution they made, we're like, yeah, that's tight. It's going on the record. Let's do it,
Well, yeah. And the other cool thing about that, I feel like a lot of people in their lives, maybe you go through a season where an 18-month season where you've had these great experiences and you have them kind of written on your heart or in your mind. And The cool part about it being a record for you, though, is you have a document of that. You literally have a document that you'll be, God willing, you'll be 55 years old and be able to flip it on the stereo after not listening to it for 10 years,
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
How do you think, besides writing with other people, how do you think your songwriting has changed, if at all, since you first began, 10 or 12 years ago?
It's changed in a lot of ways. I'll never forget the best piece of advice. You mentioned him earlier, Sam Kassir gave. So before we even hit record, and I had been I was playing in Cambridge, and he drove out from Boston to hang out and have dinner with me so we could talk about potentially working with one another. And we went down the street and had some dinner before my set, and he said, "Man, Dave, I really do love your music, and I do want to do this thing, but I don't want to make a songwriter record that you used to." He said, you need to start having more space in your songs. He's like, "I get the thing, you're used to like playing out solo, and no one wants to hear someone strum a guitar for 18 bars and then start singing." He's like, "That's not fun. So you fill that space with lyrics and melody." He said, "Give me some more space." He said, "You show me a handful of songs with some more space." He said, "And then I'll be interested, and I promise you that I'll fill the space." And I didn't really know what he was talking about when he was talking about it. And I can't lie and say it didn't offend a little bit. But then when I came back home from that tour and I started fiddling around with tunes, and I kind of started seeing what he was getting at, and I was listening to records where it is more band oriented, and I'd put on a Radiohead record, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, Tom York's barely saying anything here. There's stuff going on. That's what he's talking about. Okay, cool." So that was a big moment for me of like, how do I tell the story I want to tell in fewer words? And so to be a little more succinct and a little more efficient, and that's been a big change. There's not a song that I'm writing today that has four stanzas, and a bridge. It's right. I'm not doing that really as much as I used to.
In fairness to the singer-songwriters there, though, there's a big difference between having that space filled by Sam Kassir, the wonderful keyboard player and producer for Josh Ritter, Matt Wright, right. Wonderful keyboard player that we both have toured with, and, right. Your drunk buddies at the open mic 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Like just playing a DI'd guitar. I think,
right. Yes.
Speaking from my own experience, I always tried to fill up all the space because I was tired of hearing the horrible solos of the drunk guy next to me. So it's...
I see what you're saying. Yeah, if you were singing, then he couldn't play.
Exactly. But,
right.
I mean, and I'm sure you've had this experience too, when you get to work with musicians who have really put in the time and got to a certain level, and usually they have to be a little bit older. They're usually in their 30s and beyond. When you work with musicians like that who can just hear things and contribute things, it's right. It's like having 100-pound weight lifted off your shoulders with recording an album, man. I mean, it's amazing what musicians like that can add.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair to everybody, I mean, that's my approach and the advice that I've taken from people. By no means do other people have to follow suit, but for me, and I think what I've wanted to do for the longest time is to I don't want to put out a pop record like what we hear on the radio, but for lack of a better word, I kind of wanted to get more into like pop music and something a little more up tempo. And I'm in a very loving relationship right now, and the idea of like having these low tempo dirges about my feelings and my heart and where I came from in my past as far as religion goes, and then how I view politics. I needed to step away from that because at the moment now I feel like I've said all those things for me, and I don't really have a desire to keep kind of talking about any of that stuff that I used to write about. So I needed something personally for me that was a little more, I don't know, R&B or a little more soulful, and so that comes with writing in a different way as well.
You know who does that perfectly, that marries the singer-songwriter to the more pop element in a completely original way, and you've toured with him. I love him. Citizen Cope does that perfectly, I think.
Yeah, he's great at that, man. Those shows are just crazy.
How long was that tour that you did with him?
It wasn't long. I think 3 weeks we were out.
Yeah,
about 3 weeks. Yeah, it was crazy, man. He's got some serious fans. That was a lot of fun to get on those stages and play for his group. That was a blast. Great tour.
Yeah, brother. Well, man, it's good to hear your voice. It's been a while, man. I hope you're doing well. I hope we get to cross paths. I don't know if the virus is going to let us do that anytime soon, but I sure hope to see you through here. You were supposed to tour on this new one in the fall. Was that the plan?
Yeah, I was supposed to be in Europe right now, and then all the fall I was going to be gone. But
so what are things looking like for you right now with the release and the touring behind it and the promotion of it and all that?
Well, I'm going through with the release July 17th, and then I don't know. Right now, we're all trying to be creative and find ways to play for people in a safe way, and so I think it's going to change on a worldwide scale, and because it can't just be streaming on the internet forever. Even if venues don't open, we're going to have to figure out a way to just be around people, again, safely. But, I just miss the heartbeat that a group of people share in one space. And I think there are ways that people are doing it, drive-ins or, maybe people's backyards. I mean, hell, all this time me chasing being in a band, turns out I might be playing people's backyards in the next year or so again. But I mean, I don't sit here stressed or worried or concerned. I'm having a good time, and I never really gave myself the opportunity to be a homebody. But now that I've been forced to, I've really become fond of it.
It's not bad, huh?
It's not bad. I'm really enjoying being home. So. But it's good to hear your voice too, man. Thanks for the time, and
absolutely.
I hope you and Sam are doing well.
Okay, brother. Take it easy, man.
All right, adios.
This week's show is brought to you by Banzoogle. Built by musicians and for musicians, Banzoogle is an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful website for your music. Use promo code TWS, the initials of our podcast, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. David's latest album is entitled My Love is a Hurricane. It's out today, and it's available everywhere music is sold or streamed. If before we meet again, you sit down to write, please remember, an expensive drug habit is not a song, a compelling Instagram account is not a song, and most importantly, reverb is not a song. So let all that take care of itself, and for you, just keep your eye on the song.